Welcome back, everybody. My name is Kevin. It's good to be here with you this afternoon. Right now, the talk of the town is this CEO who's been caught at a Coldplay concert cheating with the secretary or the human resource lady or whatever the case may be. But I want to talk about the most narcissistic thing that I see taking place here, something that we all need to be aware of. Let's get into this. My name is Kevin, and this is...
The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group.
They said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say?"
When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her."
Now, before I continue, let me remind you that I'm here to support you. Down in the description box right below this video, you'll find access for one-on-one appointments with me. I do take telephone calls and video calls through Zoom, FaceTime, and WhatsApp. Also, the Rowie does have a private membership available for you where you get daily live support from me with a growing community of people from all over the world. We have weekly fellowship together, weekly Zoom calls together, and you get access to my first book called Revelations. I'm giving you valuable insights from this book once a week. So join the Rowie private membership, download the app, and get started so you can find out more about Revelations. Now, the talk of the entire world right now is this CEO who's been caught at a Coldplay concert hugging on a secretary. Now, this isn't in fact a shameful thing. And lives are going to be forever affected, including their children, including their spouses. Without a doubt. It's very unfortunate. It's very sad. However, that's not the most narcissistic thing that we can take away from this whole topic. The most narcissistic thing that I have come across surrounding this whole thing is, in fact, the attention. Is in fact the focus. Now, like I said, don't get me wrong. It is a shameful act, especially to be caught. But what you're going to discover is that the most narcissistic people are going to use this, are going to point their fingers at this, are going to draw attention to this, all the while it hides what's going on in the misery of their own lives. I've heard people say things such as, you know what, it's about time we have laws against cheating. It's about time we have laws and there's penalty and criminal action for this, that, and the other, especially when it comes to somebody cheating or having an affair. Now, I'm not going to say I disagree or I agree, but what I will say is, well, why stop there? Why stop there? Why stop with penalizing and having laws against affairs, against cheating, against this? Why not also have laws against mental and emotional manipulation within a marriage? How about we penalize and have laws against neglect? After somebody gets married and one of the spouses decides to neglect their partner, how about have laws against that? How about we have laws and penalize people, especially narcissistic people, who are cold, manipulative, cruel, use mental, psychological, and verbal assaults on people? How about we criminalize and penalize that? You see, it's really easy for narcissistic people to jump onto a bandwagon of something that has gone viral, so it gives them something to point at. By the way, how many of you realize that narcissistic people, by their nature, this is how they operate? They love the drama of another person's life that they can point at, that they can criticize, that they can ridicule. Do they not? How many of you have been with narcissistic people? Some of the most ugly, most nasty people that you could ever come across. And right now, they're probably not assaulting you. Why? Because they have this other thing to talk about, right? They have this cheating thing to talk about, right? Narcissistic people need something to talk about. That's the point of this message. They need to have something to take the attention off of their own bad behavior, off of their own rottenness. They need something to point at and say, at least I'm not like that. Now, what they're really saying is that, and by the way, they could be worse than that as far as their mental and emotional attacks on you and their assaults on people and their lies and their deceptiveness. But what they're really saying is that at least I'm not caught in the way that person was caught. Now, again, I am not saying that cheating is appropriate. I'm not saying it's good. It's disastrous, especially when it's caught, especially when someone's life has been blown up. But what I am telling you is that a narcissistic culture and a narcissistic society needs that to point at and have something else to talk about other than their own behavior. This, if anything, should show you the narcissism of nature, desiring and needing something to point at, something to gossip about, something to talk about, anything that takes the attention off of their own disgusting behavior, their own disgusting mentality in life, their own desire to manipulate. So while we live in a society and a world that wants to point their fingers at this situation for the shameful act that it is, I want you to be reminded that the majority of people who are pointing their fingers are most likely guilty of the same thing. They just haven't been caught. Amen? They're pointing at this situation just to offload and project all the horrible things that they know they deserve. Most narcissistic people deserve to be penalized, do they not? They deserve to be exposed, do they not? But a narcissistic generation loves it when somebody else is exposed, because it's almost like this person now becomes the scapegoat. And I feel like this is exactly what's taking place in this situation with the CEO. This person is now being scapegoated. Is it deserved? Perhaps. But is it fair? Probably not. Because the people who are scapegoating this situation are probably guilty themselves of far worse. This is something that I really wanted to talk about ever since I saw this. Yes, I saw it. Yes, I saw them trying to hide. I saw the whole thing, and I've heard all kinds of discussions. As a matter of fact, there's very popular YouTube personalities who are saying, this needs to be criminalized now. We need to have laws. There's always been laws established, and back in history, there were laws established that penalize people for cheating. And I was thinking to myself, well, how far back in history? Because as far as I go, back to the ancient literature of the Bible, we have stories of Abraham, who a lot of these personalities on YouTube, because of their faith that they profess, I'm sure they know about Abraham, and I'm sure they know about the multiple wives. I'm sure they know even about the concubines throughout history. How about King David and all the concubines and all the different wives? How about Solomon and all the concubines and all the wives? And yet these people were referred to as people of God. Now, again, I am not justifying the actions of this CEO. What I am here to point out is that this whole hoopla, the whole finger pointing, the whole exposing as an opportunity for narcissistic people within this culture, within the society. And by the way, a lot of times people will ask, what is the amount of narcissism? How big is narcissism? Is it 1 in 6? Is it 1 in 4? I believe the true amount of narcissism within society, within culture, will blow your mind. It's more than you care to know, but I could tell you this. The majority of people who are pointing their fingers, who are crying out for penalizing, who are crying out for legal action, who are crying out for all this stuff, I would say are probably on the narcissistic side. Because they love it when somebody else is exposed. They love it when somebody else is about to fall. They love it, especially somebody who is successful, somebody who is up on this pedestal, so to speak, in life and success or whatever. They love to see this person collapse, so long as it's not them that's collapsing, so long as it's them that's not being exposed. As a matter of fact, it gives them an opportunity to hide even more. Now, if there's another thing that we can gain valuable insight about this whole debacle, it's this. A lot of times people will think that what causes chaos, what causes cheating, what causes all this stuff in a marriage to fall apart is perhaps not having money, is perhaps not being able to enjoy life, if there's anything this debacle shows us is that that's far from the truth. Here you have a CEO of a company who, very successful. The family has everything. They can go on any trip they want to. Now, we don't know what was going on in that marriage. You don't know. I don't know. Perhaps that guy has been neglected, right? And then many of you will say, well, Kevin, perhaps then he should divorce her and do it the right way. I agree. But perhaps for the sake of the kids, it wouldn't be good to divorce from the situation. And again, I'm not justifying the behavior. I'm just saying if there's anything we can learn, it's that money, success, does not create a good relationship. Obviously, we have to assume by the nature of what's taking place that the relationship between the CEO and his wife must not have been good. If it was good, then there would be no desire to connect with somebody else. If there was a unification, if there was enough in that relationship to sustain it, then that wouldn't even be an issue. Nobody wants to talk about that, but many of you who have been in toxic relationships, many of you who've been married to a narcissistic person, you know how easy it is to start to fall into temptation. You know how easy it is to long for love, connection. All right? Now, again, we're focusing on just the actions of the CEO and that woman. We're ignoring what could possibly be going on in their own personal lives. A lot of people, especially narcissists, will say, no, it doesn't matter. We don't want to talk about it. Now, again, this is a quick message, and again, it's not to justify the shameful act. I do believe that cheating is an absolute horrible thing, but I believe the witch hunt is even worse. I believe that the narcissism of society that desires only to hide their own inadequacies, their own imperfections, and have something to point at, something to expose, that is by far the biggest issue. People of faith, people who believe in good, people who want certain things to be established, perhaps prayer for him, for the families involved. Perhaps that would be a good thing. Perhaps counseling, perhaps an opportunity for the families to come out and say, look, this is what's going on. This is what led up to that. There's always something that leads up to something like that you and I might not have the opportunity to know about. But again, like I said, this message is to expose not the cheating, not the affair. That's already been exposed. This message is to expose the reality of the narcissistic culture that loves nothing more than to have this thing now to gossip about, to have this thing to point the finger at. I wonder how long in this narcissistic society and narcissistic culture the narcissists are going to use this as an opportunity to point their finger. So again, I ask you, yes, should we criminalize this? Perhaps. Should we penalize it? But then I ask you this, where do we stop? Where do we stop the criminalizing? Where do we stop the penalizing? What are we going to consider really bad? What are we going to consider not so bad? We can consider cheating and affairs the utmost horrible thing in life, while ignoring things that happen internally in a relationship that are probably far worse, far more disgusting, far more deprivating, far more manipulative, far more demeaning, far more devaluing, far more insidious, far more evil. Oftentimes, the most evil things in this world are not what are exposed on camera, are not what are exposed for everybody to point their finger at. Sometimes the most evil things are still held in secrecy. And even more so, once there is something that they can point their finger at. It's the joy of narcissistic people to hide their own evil while pointing their finger at something they don't like. This, my friends, is by far the most narcissistic thing that I see taking place surrounding this whole debacle. Let me know your thoughts down below in the description box, and I'll be back with more videos for you right here on The Royal We. Bye.